Welcome to episode 454 of Salcedo Paranormal, and tonight I'll be talking more about mythology and the paranormal. As always, you can find all episodes of the show along with links to social media and other ways to contact me at the podcast page, and that is salcedoparanormal.podbean.com. That's SALSIDO paranormal.podbean.com. Always happy to hear from you all, whether you have comments or questions or topic suggestions or stories of paranormal experiences, whether they're your own or from others that you trust. Happy to either read those or have you join me on the show to talk about them. Thank you all for listening, whether you are here for the live streams on Discord or if you listen on the podcast or YouTube feeds, or on the Troubled Minds Radio Network, KUAP Digital Broadcasting. There you can hear replays of the show, 2 of them every night, at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern, right before Troubled Minds Radio comes on. I always want to thank Michael Strange, host of Troubled Minds Radio, as well as Liam Martin, host of the Exile Minds podcast, for producing the show and putting it on the network. And if you'd like to support the show, there are some different ways to do that. You can always share the show with others and then rate and review it on your favorite podcast platform of choice. I also have some paranormal fiction and nonfiction books over on Amazon you can check out. With another, I just basically just about finished it. Hopefully, I'll be making more announcements about that soon as well. Also, you can sign up for my Patreon, where there will be one extra episode of the show released there every month for all the membership tiers. And also, I have direct links to PayPal and Venmo if you would like to make a one-time donation. Help is never expected, but always appreciated, as I have expenses for the show in terms of equipment and research materials, and then also travel expenses, as I will be going to the Mid-Michigan Paracon this year, and that is in Mount Pleasant, Michigan, at the Soaring Eagle Casino and Resort on November 4th and 5th. That's a Saturday and Sunday, and really looking forward to that, going there, and be my first time going to a paranormal convention, and I'll be recording my thoughts on the event and just any interesting information I find there, and as well as hopefully do some interviews of people about the paranormal in general and or their experiences while I'm there as well. And then I will bring all that back and work that into to the show, whether it's 1 or 2 shows, depending on how long or how much material I have. We'll see how that goes. So I think that's everything. Thank you all for being patient as I took a week off for various reasons, but also in the end it worked out that I was able to work on that book I mentioned, which is going to be a book of all my experiences, or at least most of them, as well as some other just thoughts on the paranormal and from myself and others, and then some of the stories that you all have heard on the show. Not all of them, but several of them. That's going to be a big section of the book. Stories that I've found online and rewritten to fit the show better, not in terms of what happens in those stories, but just in terms of making it easier to read and putting them basically in my own words, just to protect the privacy, of the people that are involved in the stories, because it's more important to share the stories just so that others hear that they're not alone out there when they have paranormal experiences. So, I think that covers everything, and I can get to these the rest of the show here. Again, I always want to say I am not an expert in mythology or in how to say these various names of the creatures that I'll be talking about today. In some cases, they're fairly straightforward, and others I have no idea if I'll be saying the names right or not. So, just know that I do what I can, and forgive me for mispronouncing anything along the way. So, And these are just basic summaries of what I've found online with the help of various AI tools to help sort of condense information to make it easier to talk about on the show. So, the first one I want to talk about here is the black dog. The black dog is a legendary creature that originated in the British Isles and is seen as a harbinger of death or a disaster. It typically appears as a huge black dog with glowing red eyes. Some versions are white, brown, yellow, or spotted. I guess they mean the dog there. So, in rare cases, it is seen as a guardian of treasure or a benevolent protector. So there are variations on this. Sort of the most common one is thought to be sort of a negative presence, but there are positive ones as well. So there are many localized versions throughout the British Isles, Europe, and the US, and Latin America, indicating it is more of a species than one entity, so different kinds in different areas. And you hear that about Bigfoot as well. Different tall creatures that are covered in fur around the world and the areas seem to, in some reports, have different features. Some of the benevolent versions watch over children or help kind people. Others guard ancient sites. And I have heard some stories over the years of people or kids being lost in areas and then seeing this dog appear out of nowhere and then having it lead them to safety. I've heard that before. More often, the black dog foretells or sometimes even directly causes death. Historical examples are given of churchgoers dying when a black dog appeared. Again, going more towards the negative side of all that. To this day, the black dog is seen as a phantom or a demon that haunts certain ominous locations, especially in the UK. Its danger and superstition remain. So, so in terms of the paranormal and all this, the presence of this creature is just really usually very clear. It's not just an image; it's sort of a presence felt. So throughout history, various cultures have had beliefs in mythical or supernatural creatures, such as ghost spirits and others. The black dog is one of these that has become a prominent figure in, again, the UK and is associated with basically the paranormal. And so I already mentioned the whole thing with it being sort of a mostly thought of as a negative entity, but also being in a lot of cases positive as well. And so yeah, and it just basically can appear and disappear. And so just like a ghost in a way. So I think that covers that figure. Again, if you look up Black Dog, or even go as far as like Hellhound or any of those things, you might be able to find more information on that online. Just be careful. There is plenty of fiction out there as well associated with that. So, but still, it's always amazing when you hear these stories and find out about these creatures that people claim to see, but also they're said to just be stories. So, moving on to the next one here, and that is something more, I think, recent from what I've heard, and that is black-eyed kids. So they are believed to be ghoulish creatures who have been trying to gain entrance into homes since reports first emerged in 1996. Also vehicles, by the way, as well, in some cases. They knock on doors and windows late at night asking to be let inside. Witnesses describe them as pale children with light-colored hair, wearing modern or old-fashioned clothes. Their most distinguishing feature is their solid black eyes without pupils or irises. And they usually travel in pairs and radiate an aura of dread and terror, though they are generally polite and use respectful language. That is true. There's the negative aspects are more of a sense of the presence of them that they give off. Which to me, I've heard that some people say that there are different kinds of, or different ways to, different kinds of contacts or films or whatever you can put over your eyes, even though I've heard they are dangerous to make them look black, but also I've heard of this sort of a sense of a presence that is more than just that of a kid. Let's see here. And they seem to have psychic abilities, being able to communicate silently with each other and track people over distances. They can also manipulate emotions to inspire fear and make people want to let them inside. Flickering lights and power outages often accompany them, suggesting they give off an electric or radioactive field. Reports suggest they may have limited speaking ability. So the legend started in 1996 with an anonymous report and spread through paranormal forums, and this is online forums when they were really first just getting started. Remains primarily an internet legend, even though I've heard a lot of stories online, seen a lot of stories online, about people actually experiencing these things. I don't know if that's entirely accurate, though a few media outlets have covered it. There has been a horror film that has also been made based on that folklore. So, let's see here. Looking at the rest of this here, they, yeah, that's basically it. There's, again, just the way that these stories play out so often. People, see them, and a lot of times they'll just appear out of nowhere, but sometimes they'll be seen slowly approaching people. But yeah, a lot of stories about that. So so these black-eyed children involve their description as ghost-like beings, but solid, with psychic abilities and association with other paranormal events, such as, again, electricity, lights flickering or going off, power going on. I hadn't heard of the power outage part, though. That is odd, but that makes sense in a way. You hear about even just regular ghosts doing that in some cases. So, interesting connection there I wasn't aware of. I haven't looked into all these really until just doing these shows, so this has been just as interesting for me as I hope it is for all of you. And so yeah, that's the next one here that I wanted to go through. And moving on, thank you again for being here to listen. And let's see what the next one here is. And let me see here. One moment. I think I need some water. All right, so the next one here is another figure that is known today, and that is, let me see, I gotta find my spot. The original spelling apparently is more sounds like Bogeyman or Bogey. I think Bogeyman. It's Bogeyman, but then the modern, I think, spelling of that is more with the two O's, making it the Boogeyman. So The Bogeyman is a mythical monster that exists in various forms around the world to scare children into good behavior. Origins are unclear, but it may have developed from old legends about mischievous creatures like hobgoblins. So you have your sort of going back to darker versions of what sounds almost like it could be various versions of the of little figure of shorter little figures. And there are many of those from what I've heard. Physical descriptions vary widely, but common traits include long nails or claws, horns, terrifying eyes, and others. Many are shapeshifters, and according to folklore here, they punish naughty children in different ways, from scratching windows to, of course, in the more extreme legends, kidnapping and eating them. I have heard a lot of stories. You hear that a lot of scratching on windows and walls, and I wonder in those cases where that's the only thing happening, if that's what this is. But let me see here. Okay, various versions exist across cultures. Like, oh boy, here we go. I'm just gonna say the names of the areas. They exist in Indonesia, Hispanic cultures, and Croatia, and many more. So, and there's names there for these different ones I just mentioned, but I think they're beyond my ability to try to say. Some act as strange protectors, while others are purely evil spirits. More experts believe that it is simply a myth told by parents to, or most experts, I'm sorry, believe that's simply a myth told by parents to make children behave, not a real creature. It plays on a universal fear of monsters in the dark, so in closets and under beds. And that whole thing, I wonder about that as sort of a thought form that parents, so over time, maybe even in clusters and in areas, can generate by sort of telling those stories over and over again. So, let me see here. One connection between the legends and the folklore is the mention of its ability to shapeshift as a common trait. So, shapeshifting is it's a concept frequently associated with paranormal beings in folklore and mythology. So, really, just things not appearing as they seem, and then being able to change shape to sort of deceive or frighten people. So, there's different versions around the world, like I said, and so yeah, that's basically basically it. It's just goes to all that, and then the fear of the unknown. When it's a shape-shifting figure or a figure that's in the darkness, there's no way to know for sure what's going on there. So yeah, that's it for that one. But definitely a common one you hear about as kids, and but it does seem almost like it's could almost also be associated with a shadow figure in a way, possibly. In some cases, especially with the shorter ones, I wonder about that. And again, there's the whole. So often, I remember over the years I've heard of that, the boogeyman hiding in the closets, and again, closets seem to be, they seem to be portals in some cases in different ways. So, so I wonder about that as well. But yeah, so let me see here. I think I have time for one more. This next one I have no idea how to say. Bunyip or Bunyip? I'm not sure. And this is it is a mysterious water monster from Australian Aboriginal folklore. Descriptions of it vary widely. So I wonder again, whenever that is said about anything, I wonder if that's because it's a shapeshifter, or if there's just many things that are given the same name. But it makes me lean the most towards the shapeshifting ability. It has been reported in lakes, rivers, swamps, and water holes across Australia. Accounts describe it as both a ferocious predator and a gentle herbivore. So that's odd. That's quite different. Um, Aboriginal legends say it has supernatural powers and can alter water levels, hypnotize humans, and other abilities. But accounts disagree on whether it is basically good or bad. The name comes from Aboriginal words meaning devil or evil spirit. Europeans later adopted the name uh, Bunyip or Bunyip, I'm not sure, to basically label the creature from there. There were some 19th century reports of fossils thought to be this creature, sparking a lot of sightings, but the fossils were misidentified apparently. Today it is considered mythical folklore, though some cryptozoologists still believe it could be real, possibly a surviving ancient marsupial. The term bunyip or bunyip has been used metaphorically in Australian politics, apparently, to mock perceived imposters. So that does play to the whole trickster element, possibly shapeshifting element. So yeah, that's basically it for that. Really odd that that's sort of associated with politics, but yeah, I don't know about that one. That's there's so many creatures, and water seems to play in so much of of the paranormal as well. Think I'll leave the rest of this for next time, but I can just talk about maybe about water for a little bit. In that there are so many creatures that are said to live in the water or be able to travel through it, and that are said to be mythical or paranormal, and yet there's sightings of them all throughout time. So, and that always amazes me because, especially if they're creatures that are seen sort of near the surface or in the closest to the surface of the water, but then they just seem to vanish. That always amazes me with things like the Loch Ness monster and others, other lake monsters. Really, anything that seems to be people say they've seen these creatures in bodies of water, but then when people go looking for them, they can't find them. And of course, the scientific explanation, or the sort of skeptical or debunking explanation as well. These people were mistaken, but then that's not taking into account the possibility of different dimensions or alternate parallel universes or even other times sort of overlapping, so that maybe the creatures are there at different times and only certain people who are there will see them, but then they sort of phase back out of this level of reality or this time, and then they really aren't there after that for who knows how long. I always wonder about that. Same with any kind of creatures that are said to be seen on land that so many people say they can't exist, and yet there are entire shows built on sightings of Bigfoot and others. So I think the world and the universe is a lot more complicated than we like to think. So, but thank you all for listening, and I will talk to you on the next episode of Salcedo Paranormal. Take care.